years ago, we had a CoinAgenda at, it was 2 years ago, at Bally's. Anybody was at the Bally's one? Wow, we're getting some turnover. Okay, so the Bally's one was kind of cool because we had most of the sessions in like beautiful overlooking the strip rooms in Bally's, and then we had lunches in the Paris. And the one lunch that we didn't have sponsored, I just said, I'll take the sponsorship for Transform and talk about what we do. So this is the one lunch we don't have sponsored, so I'm taking it for Transform, and I'm going to explain a little bit what we do, and also just talk about sort of history of CoinAgenda and really where I kind of see us going. I'll start with that one first. CoinAgenda spun off from BitAngels, which I started with David Johnston in early 2013 because I went to the first Bitcoin Foundation conference and looked around and I saw that there were a couple of VCs and one of them had just invested in Coinbase, and there really weren't that many angels, and then the ones that were there were kind of there with hushed tones. It's like, hey, he's got a lot of Bitcoin, talk to him. And I was just like, I met David the first night on the rooftop party, and I said, he'd been in since 2012, so only about a year or longer, but it was a year where Bitcoin was $4 instead of like 120, so it was an important year to be. And if you were a year before that, it was 10 cents. So it was important to be in that year. But, you know, it's still okay getting in 2013 at 120. People are like, oh, my God, Bitcoin's down. It's only 6,000. It's like, yeah, it's nice return from 120. But I asked David, I said, why are there any angel groups? I'm not aware if there are any angel groups. There's angel groups for, like, biotech and for this and that. And he's like, no, why don't we start one? And I was like, oh, okay. And David's a man of action. And I came up with the name BitAngels on the fly, and I said, why don't we call it BitAngels? He said, great, let me get the URL. He did, bitangels.co. We're actually in the process of going to change it to bitangels.io because the Colombian stuff, A, is just not as well known. It doesn't make sense for us to have a CO. I've tried to buy the .com. It's been owned by Jesse from Kraken for the whole 5 years. He's just doing nothing with it but sitting on it. Every year I send him an email and say, dude, come on, sell it to me. He's like, nah, I think I'm going to hold on. How much you want for it? I think I want it from $5,000. He's like, nah, I think I'm okay. So I may try one more time, but I do have bitangels.io, and I think that's kind of the new cool thing. So we're developing the BitAngels website. Because for the first year and a half, and there's a number of, I think there's a couple BitAngels in the room, old school BitAngels here. They're probably in the booths. You know, we almost completely funded the first ICO, which was Mastercoin, and we also spun off the first digital currency fund. It was, we raised $6 million. It was a Delaware LLP, LLC structure. David, myself, and two other partners. And we put $1 million of it into Ethereum at 30 cents. So, and $2 million into MadeSafe at 0.7 cents. And I think we're also in Factum and in storage. So I think the only one that didn't go parabolic in terms of its returns was we put a little bit of money, a couple $100,000, I think, into Swarm, which actually was convertible when Swarm did the Swarm fund too. But before that, it went down to like delisting, and Joel Dietz called me and said, hey, you were like one of the main people with Swarm. It's like, you know, come on and convert it. I was like, oh, I sold it when I got dumped from the last exchange. It was like 3 days before it goes to nothing. Okay, I guess I'll take $1 or $2. But at any rate, and now we're working with a new Swarm. But so the early days just sort of have changed, because back then it was all about people with Bitcoin wanting to go and support wallets and exchanges. And even though you knew probably that Bitcoin was going to be better than your investments, you felt sort of a responsibility of the community to keep it going by investing in infrastructure. And so even if that wallet didn't work, it still helped build the infrastructure. And so we, you know, as a group of about 600 angels, there's still the list at bitangels.co. Again, we're going to kind of keep the list, I think, probably on that one, but have the city network on IO. And so we are launching the BitAngels City Network. The site will be going up shortly, bitangels.io. And The first year or so, what we did was we would go in and share deals, and we would try to pick a time when we could have someone present via GoToMeeting, and try to get someone with an exchange in the Philippines, and then somebody else in South America with a wallet, and then someone else in like Ukraine, all tied together so that we could go and find a time where people in Austin and Boston and Paris could all go. It was a bit of a logistical nightmare. So we would tape it, and people would go in later and see it. But we funded the entire Mastercoin that way. And David also would write, kind of analysis pieces on sort of his kind of analyst report on some of the ones that we found of more interest. But it really worked like a traditional sort of like, Bay Area Angels, Sandhill Angels, et cetera. And it kind of evolved into just really being a list. And that's really how... and it's still up there with the list, and people, exchange information on it, and there's a Skype group too. But really, I decided that you needed to have people meet in person, especially when it moved to ICOs. Sort of look them in the face and say, you really going to do this, or you're going to buy a Lambo and run away, right? And it was hard to do that with a GoToMeeting. So that's really how CoinAgenda was born, as an offshoot of BitAngels. The very first one was called BitAngels Global, and I think it was called CoinAgenda and BitAngels Global. Now it's just called CoinAgenda Global. And literally the presentation day, where we actually had, I think it was 20 half-hour presentations, and we had people fly in from like 9 different countries to pitch, and they were almost all non-ICOs, right? They were all, I think the winner was ZebPay. They came in from India. And, and we promoted it as like the winner of the first CoinAgenda, which was held at the Palms. We had the legendary dinner for the first time at the Mike Tyson house. And it was literally a sit-down dinner. And then we also had the opening party at the Hugh Hefner Suite at the Palms back when they had that. And so we got a nice big write-up in the Wall Street Journal, because the Wall Street Journal was like, gosh, Bitcoin is falling, and it's gone from 1,100 to 300, but they're still partying in I think the headline was "Bitcoiners Party in Sid City as Bitcoin Burns," and you can Google it; it's still out there. It's a great article, and that was the birth of CoinAgenda, and we always gave BitAngel discounts and things like that, and I always had this idea that I really wanted to kind of turn it more into like a city network. Matt Rosick mentioned that he was like the city leader for Chicago, but the vision back then of city leaders was that if the person who was on the calls was someone in your city, you'd kind of knock on their door and see if there was like an actual address there. So, I mean, I did it for a couple of people in LA. I think I was living in LA at the time, or at least spent a lot of time in LA, and say, yeah, okay, they're there, or I'd do a little video and post it. And so I got an inspiration, though, from what like Social Media Week has done over the years, and what Startup Grind has done. And many of you people who are Las Vegas natives or residents may remember, before I moved to Puerto Rico, I spent about, I think, a year and a half before I moved as the city leader for Startup Grind. And so Startup Grind was started in 2010 by Derek Anderson, and he basically had this idea that every city has startups, should have a monthly meetup where you listen to, experienced entrepreneurs, talk about, life as a startup and investors and things like that. They're now with over 300 cities, and that's in like less than 8 years. And the model is basically that the city you're in it takes 80%, and the corporate takes 20%, and you're responsible for all of the expenses. And so if you work it, you're not going to make a fortune, but you're going to go and meet your community. You're going to get new investors. You're going to get deal flow. And it just seemed like the right model. I never had enough time to do it on my own. And did somebody find Dave? I was just going to introduce him. He's been around the whole conference. Dave Williams, at any rate. Okay, bring him in. So David is coming on as executive director. I guess I like working with David's at BitAngels, because David Johnson obviously has gone on to become legendary super angel and chairman of Factum, and still one of the brightest guys in the business. He's spoken at prior CoinAgendas, and we're looking to roll out about 20 cities in the next year, and the model is going to be, depending on the size of the city, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 6 times a year. So Vegas will probably be 4 times, right? And David will take that one on. And then we've got Sandra DeTore, who also happens to be Enzo's sister, and works for a family office network in New York, is going to be doing the first Bit Angels City Network event on Wednesday, November 4th, 5th. I think it's 6th or 7th. It's whatever that Wednesday is. I think it's the 7th. 7th. The 7th. And that'll kick it off. We're looking to, grow to about 80 cities in maybe 2 years. Don't have to be 300 cities, but the obvious places: LA, San Francisco. I've got a couple people in Seattle. So really, the right person, like for Chicago, is not going to be Matt Rozak because he's on planes all the time. It's going to be somebody who, knows their community of investors, both blockchain and non-blockchain, pretty well. Is passionate about blockchain and likes organizing, right? And so the idea is, try to get, small cities should have like 20, 25 people there for a breakfast, and bigger cities might have 35 or 40, and giant cities like LA and New York and London and Tokyo should probably have like 60 or 70. Like the New York Angels, whenever I go, they have like 150 people in the room. And we're gonna go and just kick it off and see where it goes. But that'll be at bitangels.io, and we'll cross promote it with CoinAgenda. And so CoinAgenda, has sort of, when I first started off CoinAgenda, the reason I did it, aside from just wanting to meet people in person from BitAngels, because we have been doing these little BitAngel networks at other conferences, and we'd have to hey, can we meet in the coffee shop, or hey, let's do a lunch somewhere. I think we actually had 100 people at the Inside Bitcoins Las Vegas in 2013 for a party, but it's just that I was just like, let's do our own conference. So and it kind of morphed from being a BitAngels extension to sort of being one of the early conferences, just always on the circuit. And and I think what I've always said is I want it to be the Goldman Sachs conference of blockchain, because Goldman Sachs isn't likely to do it. And really public blockchain too. I mean, I don't mind having some of the private blockchains come in and talk about investment opportunities on top of Hyperledger or whatever, but there's enough shows sort of talking about governance and private blockchains and permissioned or whatever. I'm really trying to connect investors with companies doing interesting things, and also have the service providers, the lawyers, the accountants really help give them the best practices, and also be just a place where relationships happen. I mean, that's the whole thing, is that I don't ever want to have a CoinAgenda that's more than about 750 people. Last year it was 600, and that was actually a bit big. But it's part of Transform Group. Many of you know when it was just called Transform PR. And just wanted to sort of fill you in on some of the other things we're doing besides CoinAgenda, which is part of our events group. BitAngels will also be really part of the events group, Transform Events, and Token Match. And there's David right there. come on up. I already did the pitch, but might as well just sit there. And oh, that's right, you were doing the judging. Sorry. So David has been in Las Vegas as a entrepreneur professor at UNLV, as well as traveled the world. That's why he's perfect for this in the startup community, and also has been a really excellent CFO for hire and CPA, MBA, all that stuff. So. We're going to grow this thing to like 80 cities and get a lot of deal flow, and then bring the best of them back to CoinAgenda and Token Match. And Token Match guys all go back to Miami? Any of them here? Okay, so Token Match, for those of you who aren't aware, is a joint venture between CoinAgenda and Lydian's Capital. So Lydian's Capital is Leonard Board, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here. He just came from an event we did in Barcelona. And he approached me earlier this year we were both speaking at a conference for Polymath. We're both advisors there. and said, hey, I got an idea for you. And I was like, I'm pretty busy. And he's like, no, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. You know, Leonard, if you've met him, is a very persuasive guy. And he's just like, here's the idea, and, you know, we're going to do all the work. We're going to fund it, and, like, you just have to, like, bring your network and this and that, and we'll make money. And we're going to create value. And sure enough, we've been doing it every month. And it's basically a roadshow in a box. Unlike the, you know, kind of 10-minute presentations you get at CoinAgenda, where you're presenting to, you know, thought leaders and to investors and to service providers and to other startups you might be able to make deals with. This is where it's a private boardroom setting where you have 20-minute boardroom sessions with investors that we screen. We don't charge the investors, we just charge the startups, no more than 20 companies. And we do it in Asia, North America, and Europe, and we switch every month. So we just finished Barcelona. Prior month we did Singapore. We're doing New York City next month, the day after Consensus Invest. We usually tack it on to events that we know investors are already going to be there. And then in December, we're going to do Korea. We're going to do Seoul. January, we're going to be back here at CES. And CoinAgenda Summit we did last year. So I've had an interesting relationship with CES, as many of you know. As an experiment, I got the URL CES party list at 1990. Oh, geez, what year was it? It was when blogs were first sort of becoming a thing. I think it was 2002. And I wanted to prove that I could go and get my list of parties, which I started. You know, when you're in the PR business, you learn about parties because you know the media get invited, you go and swap lists. Literally, we used to, like, email things back and forth. Before email, I think we used to hand, like, you know, mimeographed copies of lists or just notes, like, okay, I'll get you into this party if you get me into this party. And I just thought I should put it on a blog, and I wanted to also show, you know, our SEO chops so we could get it #1. So it's been #1 and #2 for a while, and it's just all the parties at CES, and obviously I get to promote our own stuff too. So this is the 4th year now that I'm curating the blockchain content as an advisor to CES. It's called the Digital Money Forum. Robin Raskin stopped in briefly. She's a force of nature. She's the former managing editor of PC Magazine in the old days. And she now runs something called Living in Digital Time. She does 20 different shows for CES. She does Robots on the Runway. She does Fashion Tech. And she came up to me and she said, you know, I want to do something on the sharing economy. You know, Uber, Airbnb, and Bitcoin. I said, nobody wants to share their Bitcoins. They're different things. And so we just decided to make it on. I wanted to do blockchain and Bitcoin. This is 4 years ago. She said, let's do it with just digital money, because I'll get MasterCard to sponsor, and I'll get, like, Visa, and, you know, the guys that actually have money, you know, because this was, I think, 2015 we did the first one, 16, 17, 18, 19, 18, 17. It was 2015 or 16. I think it was 16, January 2016. And she called around and said, I don't think I can get anybody to sponsor in this industry. It seems like everybody in your industry is either broke or in jail. Obviously, that wasn't the same for last January. But we've had some, like, we sort of, the key feature of that, it's gotten less and less sort of fintech, credit cards and payments, and more blockchain every year. So this year it's really going to be about half blockchain. We've had some great speakers. We've had Brock there. We've had I actually got Roger Ver to come into the United States for a rare appearance. We got Joe Lubin, you know, from Consensus, one of the founders of Ethereum. We had Charlie Lee, founder of Litecoin. So that's January 8th, and it's going to be part of what we last year called the CoinAgenda Summit. I think I'm going to rebrand it this year because it's really not a summit, because I'm going to roll Token Match into the middle day and start with a media event like we did last year. So I think I'm going to call it the CoinAgenda Showcase. So the first day is going to be a big media event for people who want to launch things, because that's when all the media come on Sunday. And last year we just simply, they're walking down the aisle in Mandalay, and we're like, oh, come over here. We've got, like, we rented out the Oriole, and we had, like, TechCrunch and, like, you know, hundreds of media show up. And so we're going to do that again on Sunday night, the 6th. The 7th, we're going to have a token match. I'll probably do some kind of CoinAgenda content just before it, but just maybe 1 or 2 speakers or something like that. And then they'll have the presentations On the token match side, it'll be on that Monday, and on Tuesday we sort of like are sponsoring a slot where I think we're limited to like 12 companies where you actually get a CES speaker's badge if you do it. And I think it's cheap. It's like 6,000 or something. So let us know if you're interested in that. That one's more talking to consumer electronics thought leaders. Token match obviously is investors, and then the first day is media. So it's a little bit of experiment. It's sort of like a little potpourri. And we'll have a couple other exciting surprises we were planning yesterday. So more like, musical guests and things. So, and that's it. So I'm going to then turn this over to Enzo to talk a little bit about what we've done with Transform Strategies. Because again, Transform Group has the events that I've just spent most of the time talking about because you're at one of our events. Transform PR, Xenia is our Chief Operating Officer, has been with Transform since the beginning. Before that, she was at Social Radius, and before that, God, you go all the way back to like the Terpin group in this last day. She's been with me for 18 years. Longer than I've been married to my wife, and longer than she's been married to her husband. So she must be doing something right, and just one of the very best in the business. And so we'll talk a little bit about PR, but I want to talk about strategy because these days we're finding that people come to us, and we worked with over 200 blockchain companies on the PR side, done 110 ICOs, but people are coming to us a lot earlier now and saying, especially now, do I want to do a security token? Do I just want to raise funding and like build something? And these are like, questions that like 3 years ago, it's like, oh, I'm going to do an ICO, right? Even last year. And so Enzo's background, I go back to the earliest days of MarketWire when Michael Schuler, who was here, we announced Blockchain Wire with sort of Enzo, me, and Michael reuniting, bringing back the band. And we'll talk a little bit about Blockchain Wire at the end. But he joined, he was formerly, he was my guy at NASDAQ when we did the NASDAQ deal, which formed MarketWire. And then that ended up getting sold, and then sold again, and then sold to NASDAQ, and then NASDAQ just sold it for $300 million early this year. So, but Enzo helped us transform strategies, sort of to take a lot of the advisory work I was doing, the work he's been doing on security tokens, and then we just recently brought in Mariana Danilovic, who actually, again, helped me on the strategy when she was at KPMG as a managing director for MarketWire, and she got into the blockchain. It's like, let me bring you into the big house here. So, Enzo, talk a little bit about Transform Strategies and some of the things you do on the markets, and then Mariana, you can talk a little bit about sort of what you see as needs in business development and business plans now that you have to actually go out and raise equity as well as tokens.
All right, great. Yeah, so I joined up with Michael about 9 months ago, and when I first came in, it was all about really just the fire hose of leads and sales and all that stuff. But my background is I've rolled up mostly firms in the investor relations space, the proxy kind of fight space. So mostly companies that deal with the actual public companies in dealing with their investors. And one of the things that I saw as I started looking at all the exchanges pop up and everything happening, I was like, you know what? There's going to be no aftermarket. When $8 billion gets raised in a pre-market, you have to have the natural buyers on the aftermarket. And I was like, that's not going to happen. There's no way. So it's like they're going to need kind of market making and kind of liquidity type of solutions. And because of my background from NASDAQ, I built like the corpus. The NASDAQ business that I built there was all about surrounding the listing with products and services that helped to make you a better public company. So investor relation website, all of the kind of compliance stuff, agri filings, all of the stuff that you have to do, and then really do other tools around investor targeting and surveillance. Because as Ashley Fenton said yesterday, even the biggest issuers in the world, Apple, does not know who all of their shareholders are. So, and that can eventually go away with the kind of security token infrastructure. So the concept was, can we kind of come up with like a listing package? Because everything is different listings. Binance charges this much, these guys do this, like Bittrex has to make sure that you are a true token, like there's all these different rules and all these different exchanges. And how could we create like a listing venue, like almost like a NASDAQ listing? So the concept was, let's help them get listed on exchanges, and then get partners who can market make, because the market making is all offshore. Whatever you think about the market making, it doesn't matter. They need it. So what we started seeing is in the transform strategies, there's going to be a couple of key items. One is the business development side. We do a lot of biz dev already. I'll actually connect two companies together. We'll sell. We're always out there doing that. And actually, Mariana's background is amazing in the business plan, strategy work, all of that stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. The second piece is the kind of aftermarket type of support. So you raise the ICO, you do the strategy, you raise equity, or you raise the ICO. You have to do the aftermarket support. That's going to get you to market makers, get you on exchanges. And then the third piece is a token kind of relations concept, which is investor relations for tokens. A security token, a utility token. So I'm basically applying the same IR concepts to the token industry, and I credit actually Stephen Mead with coming up with that term, like token relations. It's a great term. So one of the things with blockchain was, so at NASDAQ we had a wire service, we had IR websites. So Blockchain Wire is partnering with West Corporation, which is our old business, and they're the leaders in IR websites. That was the business that I built at NASDAQ. They ended up buying the entire business out. They have 80% of the investor relations websites in the world. They have created a token relations website for us. So we're going to be able to start doing token relation websites like investor relation websites. Even though there's no compliance yet, we're going to basically follow rules that are kind of out there so that there's best practices. So that's the last piece of it. And we think we're already starting to see a huge amount of traction. In fact, my goal.
And we launched yesterday.
Yeah, my goal is to beat the PR side in revenue. So game on, Xenia. So, but we just see that there's a market out there, and a lot of these companies, and it's great because the PR is also part of it, right? If you're in the kind of communication companies that I've rolled up, their investor relations, their public relations, their strategy, it's not just, we're not just doing groundwork, right? We're doing a lot of strategic thinking at the board level, and I think that's the key. So I'll turn over to actually Mariana, because I think, because her background is amazing. I mean, when Michael said that she was coming on board, I was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build a rock star team of people that have been there, done that, and then we're going to apply it to crypto. So here you go.
Thank you. It's really amazing to be on the venture side my whole career and acceleration side, and in really some really interesting environments at Sony. We looked at every media company on the planet with our venture investment side, and we were early in, and we invested in a satellite channel in India many years ago, which is it's kind of groundbreaking. And then KPMG, we basically were the first accelerator within a Fortune 500 company, and had a deal flow where you just couldn't really sleep anymore, right? And Michael's created that, but on steroids, which is really interesting to see. And what's fundamentally different between this and every other business acceleration process that I had the chance to participate in is that here we have another major thing happening, which is the Fortune 500 companies are shuffling out of the Fortune 500 list. As a matter of fact, there's research that shows that in the next 10 years, half of the Fortune 500 companies will be off the list. So as Enzo talks about the speed up of the liquidity.
Replaced by the current crypto 50.
So no, and that's probably what's going to happen. So as we sit here in this room, there are people in this room that will be on that list, within the next 10 years. And the question is just going to be, how are you going to get there faster than ever before in history? And what kind of partnerships do you want to close here in this room and then outside and with our other clients, the 110 that you guys have advised and promoted, et cetera. So we have a huge opportunity collectively, all of us, with all of these different networks that Michael has set up. We have access to the world that's going to replace the world as we know it. So
and also the traditional side too. So Enzo's network and his team in New York and the world financial markets, and yours in Hollywood and entertainment.
Yeah, just plugging it all in. and helping them get to that next level. So that's the exciting part. And having PR as kind of hand in hand, it's really fascinating because I feel like we have the way to also tell the world that we have this. It's kind of fun.
And Xenia, I think everybody knows this for PR, but why don't you just say a few words about like what's different today to be able to get attention, which then gets you. That's really what people, when they go to India or Asia or Korea, are looking for. It's like, oh, where you are in the U.S. and global media. What the bar is raised, right? I mean, what does it take now to get excitement from a Wall Street Journal, from a Fortune, from a Forbes?
Yes, so we dealt in the past with over 200 companies in the blockchain space and did about 80 very successful token sales. A couple of
110 now.
110 names you probably have heard, like Ethereum, Bittrex, Eternity, Swarm, Wax, I don't know, Kraken, a lot of them.
No, those are exchanges, but we also work with exchanges. But yeah, we launched Bittrex and also the early. But on the ICO, I guess the ones they're on our website. We did about 30%. But I suppose the best known ones would be, of course, Ethereum, MadeSafe, Neo, Quantum, Lisk, Golem, Gnosis. Probably forgetting a few. Wax Video Coin.
Yeah, a lot. At the time, at least, it was fine to say, hey, we're a cool blockchain project. Unfortunately, that doesn't fly anymore because it's like everybody has a blockchain project of some type. So it is important to actually have some essence and utility for it. Often people come to us and say, we want PR, but when we ask questions, well, what is your token actually for? Why do you know, why? And then there are no answers. We have to send them back to the strategy team because you get your answers straight before we can go out to the world and tell your story. So it's just important that you, not just a better version of something else, but something very original, good approach, and good advisory board is always good names behind it. Anything that shows that you're serious and not just a pump and dump kind of shop, and have a not well-spoken CEO helps too. We have actually less of the semi-Asperger CEOs that we used to have in the past, where you really need to tell them, okay, that's how you talk. It's a better crowd in the blockchain space, I think. They're more vivid, more, well, what you got a good story, ideally be a leader in your space, and be able to socialize and to tell your story. We help crafting the message, but the CEO should be always the best salesperson of your organization. All right, that's.
Oh, and then Enzo, do you want to talk a little bit about our international expansion?
So we have actually Jay Lee over here. Jay, why don't you wave your hand, and then it's Andrew, and then David Coe. So we're actually expanding during a downturn, which we talked about as a strategy, because if we're the best shop in PR in the world in blockchain, we want to make that distance even more, right? We want to become much bigger. So we opened up a new office in Seoul. We have a team there, and we're going to start looking at different areas. And it's not really a franchise model; it's more of like a co-investment model. We are the kind of majority holder, but the goal is to really extend strategy, PR into all of these other areas, especially Asia, because we know Asia is extremely still very active in ICOs. But even on the STO side too. So the thing is, what's going to happen is with the STOs too, we're going to have all these different jurisdictions, and the way you actually communicate can actually get you in trouble. So if you say something somewhere, you're going to have to be careful how it kind of reflects here in the United States or somewhere else. So that's why we're going to try to really get very jurisdiction focused and understand it, so that we can teach you how to communicate in a proper way, so you don't get into trouble. And that's part of the strategy. The overall strategy.
Great. So we got time for maybe one or two questions, and then we're going to go to our compliance panel. Coco.
So we have really good opportunities in what we're seeing. What is it?
It usually starts with a conversation. We do. So we get so many, because of Michael. We get so many leads. It's ridiculous, right? So We have a process. We have analysts that actually do some due diligence. They'll actually get you on a phone call. They'll have a conversation with you. They'll analyze it. I think with the Bid Angels process, we'll also be able to kind of filter, have analysts and so on and so forth. And then we just have a conversation. We'll look at the white paper. We'll look at the deck. We'll meet you and so on and so forth. Hold on.
And these events that we have, the token match and CoinAgenda, if you present at them, we see it. We're kind of more, like Enzo's there, Mike's there, I'm there. We get to see the company, we get to meet you. So that's a nice way of getting in too. And it worked for some companies here today.
Warren, did you lose the microphone? No, well, obviously we have to keep one up here. We're down to one? Okay. Any other questions? One more, then we'll get the compliance panel going. Okay. Thank you, team.